So good evening, everybody. For those who are on an evening time schedule, and for anyone else, good afternoon, good morning, and whenever you're watching this, welcome to the Fellowship Trust Lecture Series. Tonight, we are honored to have Alessandra Sanguinetti. Just a brief background for her. Alessandra Sanguinetti is an Argentine American photographer. She's based in Petaluma, California. She's the recipient of numerous fellowships and awards, including the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Hasselblad Foundation Grant, the Sundance Development Grant, the Robert Gardner Peabody Fellowship, and the Rencontre d'Arles Discovery Award. She is also a McDowell Residency Fellow. Her photographs are in various public and private collections, such as the Museum of Modern Art of New York, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. Her monographs are On the Sixth Day, The Adventures of Guille and Belinda 1 and 2, and Le Gendarme sous la Colline, and Sorry, Welcome. Her upcoming monograph, Some Say Ice, will be published in the fall, and she is a member of Magnum Photos since 2007. For more than 2 decades, the Magnum photographer Alessandra Sanguinetti has captured the lives and imaginations of 2 cousins in rural Argentina. Her images portray a childhood that is both familiar and exceptional, and this collection, published recently together with Fellowship, is an edit derived from 2 bodies of work, The Adventures of Guille and Belinda and The Enigmatic Meaning of Their Dreams, which was published by the Nazzarelli Press and exhibited with the Yossi Milo Gallery in 2010. The Adventures of Guille and Belinda and the Illusion of the Everlasting Summer was published a decade later with MAC. So welcome, thank you for coming here. We're looking forward to hearing this lecture from such an esteemed guest. And thank you for being so generous with your time, Alessandra.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me. It's actually nice to just get out of the world and be here for a little bit. Okay, I should share my screen, and then I'm not gonna see. I'll share it and tell me if you see it. Do you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm gonna play from current slide. Okay. Oh, I do see you.
Look at that.
So, where to start? I'll start with this picture that I made when I was a kid. I made this picture when I was about 9. I grew up in Argentina. I was born in the States, but I grew up in Argentina, and we would spend a lot of time on the farm. And I started like taking pictures of everything that I loved, etc. when I was 9 years old, and I'm especially attached to this picture that I did on the farm. That was my favorite time of day, like when a big storm was about to come. And I think I've just been trying to recreate that feeling, since then. So all my time as a child in the farm just informs, I think it informs all my work. Even the work that's not done in Argentina, but it directly informs, for sure, the adventures of Guille and Belly. So to fast forward from there, the first real big body of work I did was On the Sixth Day, which was a work about farm animals, their relationship with us, but mostly like farm animals as seen from, as I imagined I would see them if I was another animal, right? So I would always be on my knees. I would always have sort of the point of view of the animals. That's something that's preoccupied me since I'm very young. You know, the way we treat animals, the way we look at them, etc. And so these are just a few of those. I'm going to talk about the adventure. Huh? Sorry? Okay.
Oh, go ahead. I think someone unmuted.
Okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah. But the adventures of Guille and Belly wouldn't really exist without On the Sixth Day, because while I was working on the Sixth Day for many years during the 90s, I was working in the same space where Guille and Belly were born. And that's how I got to know all the community in the area. And that's how I got to know their grandmother, Juana, who lived by the side of the road and had like this picture, it's at Juana's, this one is at Juana's, this one is at Juana. I didn't actually choose them because of that. It's just random now. But this is arriving at Juana's. Um, that's not my dad's. But so I became really intimate. I already was very connected to the space, but I became very intimate with the people around there, with just every road, with every hour of the day. It's, you know, I just became really immersed in it. It's really the space that I love most in the world. So while I was working on this, Guille and Belly would be running around. If I was at Juana's, they were tiny, running around and trying to get in the picture. And I was like, get away or hold the sheep for me, etc. This is the Juana's too. This is Guillermina's older brother. And there's Juana. And that's me, Juana and Guille, while I was trying to do a picture of the rat. But anyway. So yeah, they were constantly around me and I wasn't interested. And then I left for some time. For a year or so, I wasn't there. And when I came back, I was recovering from, I had been very ill and I was recovering. So, but I went back to the farm and said, okay, I'm going to continue on the 6th day and wrap it up. But I wasn't really into it. I kept looking, you know, trying to continue the work, but I wasn't into the whole world of the animals there because it's just, it's not really a happy place. And I think I just needed some release. So I just started to hang out with Guille and Billy, like another kid, basically. And I would go to Juana's and spend the day with them, following them around. And of course, I would be taking pictures and filming them because that's what I always did before. I mean, I would never be without my camera. Anything that was of any interest, anything that drew my attention, I would photograph it. So I was photographing them without absolutely any plan. But little by little, you know, where it turned a lot was when I started to film them more and more, and then I would look at the videos at home and like pause the video and see a still, and I would think, I wish I could photograph that way. You know, my images are so static and I direct too much and like I can't. So I had the idea of just putting just doing everything at once, just putting the video on a tripod and photographing while they acted out for the video. So that's kind of how it started. This is them and Juana. And in that period when I was just kind of fooling around with them, that's when like the two works on the 6th day and the adventures overlapped a little. This image I originally did thinking it would go in the project on the 6th day. And it's really in the adventures. Same with this one. This is a goat that I think might be another picture, but I think this is the same goat that you see on the 6th day that's running away. Because it was a goat, the one that isn't covered, was very sick. So Juana had tied them together so that it would be forced to have the mother's milk and warmth. It couldn't be abandoned. And eventually I took it back to my house and fed it because I knew if not, it was just going to die at Juana's because I can't take care of every single animal. And I brought it back and I'm pretty sure that's her. That's Rosita. And then, you know, I would also photograph them in black and white like this, thinking to add the word to Sweet Expectations, that my first body of work that I did as a student. It's this one, um, photographs of kids. And this one I actually just discovered looking through my folders. I had completely ignored it. And this was like a special day when we went to the abandoned house of Guillermina's other grandmother, not Juana. And they started just unpacking costumes and jewelry and dressing up, etc. And so I was taking black and white, taking color, filming them. I just could not get enough of it. You know, I couldn't get enough, and I didn't know, nothing felt that it was enough to capture the life and the richness that I felt then. Um, so at the same time, I was filming, and I'm going to show you the little, you might have seen it somewhere or other, but so I'm sorry about that. But I'll show you the little video. That's a picture that ended up being the cover. Let's see. Can you hear it? Yeah.
Yeah.
No sé mucho rojo porque si no va a gastar. Parece una gitana. Lo único que me van a empezar a pintar. ¿Qué? Pasa. Bueno, a mí, mi primer sueño, que era lindo, que era una princesa que me casaba con el príncipe. Que tenía muchas naranjas, era rica, tenía un castillo. Y me da como miedo tener novio. Y porque me dejen, porque me abandonen. Nada más.
¿Y por qué crees que te va a abandonar?
Porque yo he visto muchas películas y son casi de verdad. Y he visto eso, que abandonan a la gente. Y se van con otro. No te asombres si te digo lo que fuiste. Un ingrato con mi pobre corazón. Porque el juego de tus lindos ojos negros alumbran el camino de otro amor. Y pensar y pensar que te adoraba tiernamente, que a tu lado como nunca me sentí. Y por esas cosas raras que no olvidan, en el beso de tu boca yo no olvidé. Amor de mis amores, vida mía, que me hiciste que no puedo consolarme sin poderme contemplar. Ay, cómo me lo hago. Cómo me lo hago los bigotes. A ver, hazlo. Ay, no. A ver, dale vos que sabes. Sí. Dale. A ver, dale, a ver. Ya está.
video did was a way to play with them, to get to know them better. Because with children, of course, you don't get to know them just by talking to them. It's only through play that you can do it. So I figured out a way of playing with them where, and I was actually on equal terms, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. That was just how I was back then. Even I was 28 or something, but felt perfectly comfortable, at ease, and at home, and happy being with both of them. So I would set up a lot of interviews like the one you saw. I have many of those. And then I would also give them like cues, sort of like improvisation in theater. When I would say, hey, why don't you pretend you're husband and wife? And then I would let them decide where it would be, who would be husband, who would be wife, how they would be dressed, and what they would do. I would, of course, just, keep some kind of order, because if not, so that it could be visual, but it mostly came from them, and I would just give them cues, and sometimes they would propose things, and I would guide it so that it could be contained. And that allowed them, first of all, allowed me to learn from them and to get to know them and to play in a way I hadn't played before. But it also allowed them to have some control that normally they wouldn't have when I was just taking pictures, because I tend to be kind of a little dictator when I take pictures, so that in some contexts it really works, but in that context it didn't, because I would just take the air out of everything. So with the video and the camera, there was the right balance of that. So it would be a mix of pre-visualization and improvisation, and then just balancing it. And it kind of allowed them to become stars of their own life. That's what I think was really important. They were participants. And they were imagining their futures. They were making whatever fantasies they had, materializing them for the camera. And at that time, there were no phones, and TV was like 5 channels that were transmitted from far away, and you could see at certain times of day. So the idea of somebody filming them, of somebody just thinking that their play was important, was huge. They would get nervous, even though they knew that nobody was going to see it. So that was just the first few months, and I really felt like I was I felt guilty, like I really should be working on something serious, but I couldn't help myself. So after a few months, I was like, oh, I should be on the 6th day. But then I looked at the material, I remember going to a city and developing the film and thinking, there's something here. This is a story. I haven't seen this before. Nobody pays attention. First of all, nobody pays attention to this space, the Pampas, the life in the farmlands there. The only kind of attention, now it might be different, but at the time that I was doing it, at least all that I saw was mostly stereotypical touristy pictures of gauchos crossing the river in the sunset on horses, or kind of melancholic black and white photographs showing the countryside as a metaphor for something else. So all that space was very well represented in music, folklore, and all that, and in literature, of course. And in painting, I think the only one that I was most attached to was Molina Campo. I don't have a slide of him here, no. But he did kind of these, this was like during the 1940s. Don't quote me on that. But he would make sort of caricatures, but really beautiful of farm life. But all the characters would would really be three-dimensional, and there was a humor about it and the depiction of life there. And that's the only time that I saw that somebody was actually paying attention. Anyway, going back. Yeah, after a few months, I knew that this was a story, and this was a story that was worth continuing. This was a story that was important. Yes, two little girls in the middle of the farm where nobody goes by, I thought was really important, and I still do. And paying attention is important. So after that realization, I started to organize myself more. You know, I realized that they had this preconceived idea of what their life should be like. They just thought, you know, their boyfriend, school, maybe, marriage, children, work, funeral. You know, that was kind of their idea of life. And I mean, they knew that was life, but they dreamt of being a singer, being famous, you know, mostly being a singer or an actress or just dancing in the world. And they had those two contradictory expectations of their life. So I decided to just, I would go with a list, you know, and ask them to play with those ideas. And they took it from there. Let's see. And then a lot of like coincidences that I don't think are coincidences anymore, you know, are, you can see through time. For example, this cat, I realized when I look at all of Guille's pictures through time, there's always a cat, you know? And, you know, there's obviously a black cat in front of black cat is bad luck. And she's always been preoccupied with being alone, of not getting married, etc. So like you see a lot of patterns and accidental things that keep repeating that you can start connecting after some time. Again, with this, I would bring them like coffee table, Renaissance, medieval, little like pamphlets, books, and just show it to them and see how they reacted, and then we would choose something to reenact. And at first, I would give them props, but that I very fast realized that didn't work. That what was really interesting is to watch them choose the props, you know, take it from their life. So everything here is absolutely from their life. And I think I already spoke about this during the Obscura talk, but here I had asked them I had a twisted proposal, which was, why don't we play that one of you died and the other one does the eulogy, and I film you, because I wanted to see what eulogy they would imagine of the other one. But they dressed up, everything, but then they changed it and they made it into the funeral of the older boy that Guillermina liked, Archibaldo. And here's another video of that. Oh, I have to play.
Momento. Archibaldo, Archibaldo, esposa de Guillermina, ha muerto con una tragedia muy dolorosa y hoy le enterramos.
at the same time that I was doing this more fantastical or playful scenes, I would photograph in a more observational way, because if you don't have some kind of grounding, everything else just kind of loses its meaning because you don't know where it's coming from. This image is in one of the traditional kind of rodeo festivities, and I just remember thinking, and I realized then, men there have this like really classy, kind of really beautiful attire that they wear, even working every day. These pants and the knives are always ornate. This isn't such a special occasion. This is the way they are. And when it is a special occasion, the men, I mean, they're like peacocks. They're beautiful. Women don't have absolutely any of that, and they work alongside men there. But they're not celebrated. They're not, it's the gaucho. The kind of women are invisible there, in terms of the culture and representation and appreciation too, right? So I did feel a kind of satisfaction of being in these settings and just photographing the girls. Nobody would understand why I wasn't photographing, the brave exploits of like mounting a bull or a cow or something. And here's Guillermina always taking care of Belinda. Belinda didn't need taking care of, but Guillermina was always that way. Second. There you go. So this phase of the work where it was more discovery and playfulness, lasted 2 or 3 years, and then of course time passes as it always does, and they became teenagers, and I was in my 30s. We the three of us had to adapt and get, or at least more for myself, I had to like get to know them again every time, because at that age, you change so quickly. Wait. Okay, there. Yeah. They became more withdrawn. They were not interested in play as much. They were inside, they wouldn't go out. So, and I would go and I realized that I would just be repeating the same images over and over again. So for a minute I thought, it's over. I can make a nice book about this and move on. And thankfully, a friend of mine, it's always good to have somebody's eye on your work, always. A friend of mine looked at it and said, no, this is when it's going to get way more interesting. You have to just push through. So and he would just take me and throw me out of the truck and make me work, and I'm forever grateful for that. I don't know if I would have given up, but I think some encouragement and some talking to always helps, because it's really easy to just stop when it gets hard, or when it gets repetitive. But if you if you just push through it, I think you're rewarded. So yeah. So during adolescence, it was much slower, also because I moved to New York, so I wasn't there all the time, and they also moved away from each other. And Guillermina's parents divorced. There was a lot of changes. so there's a lot of images that are at tables, you know, that's what they did. And I would be like, let's go inside and do this and this. But it didn't, that was gone, that was over. So, you know, I had to grow up too. You know, they were kind of drifting into worlds of their own. And this was the last image I did where I convinced them. This was me begging them. This wasn't, I can say this was not a collaboration because they just did it to make me happy. But that's fine. I wanted, you know, David Wojnarowicz. You know, his book, I just closed knives. I just completely blanked out on the title. But there's one image that he did of himself buried in rocks that had always stayed with me. And I know his work is so far away from mine. I mean, it couldn't be further away. But I wanted to like honor him doing a picture. And I think also unconsciously, I'm like burying a phase of our lives. You know, this was really the last time that we just did something extreme like that, recreating something. This is when other people start appearing slowly, and they're gonna start coming apart. And Belinda falls in love. So she's Belinda is in that kind of world, and Guillermina is into some kind of self-perceived spinsterhood, even though they were just 16, right? So like the independence of their childhood and the enchantment that it had was just being replaced by a much more complicated and demanding adult life. You know, I realize I have a hard time talking about this work now because it is work that I've done. I started in 1998. So I have spoken about it a lot. So I realize that I'm missing a lot of things that I would normally say. So, you know, later just I'll take questions, but it is hard sometimes. I feel like I'm copying myself when I speak about the work, you know, because I've said this so many times and thought it so many times. I know I'm being overly honest here, but and this was in 2006, and that's when I was pregnant too. And that's when I had my daughter. And I was living in New York at the time, and I remember that I found out that Belinda was pregnant, and her due date was her wedding was on my due date, but she got married when she was pregnant. And I remember like telling my husband, I have to go. I've been waiting for a day like that, you know, like photographic, to go to her wedding. And I remember like really thinking, I just have to go. And Martin was like, but you're having a baby. And I was like, why don't you go? Like, you know exactly how I take pictures. You've been there all along. You would know what I would do. Just go. And he was like, no, I want to be here when my baby is born. So I missed Belinda's wedding, and that was painful. She was 16, by the way, there. And this is a big jump. And Belinda dropped out of school in 10th grade. She was never interested in studying. And Guillermina after Belinda got pregnant, Guillermina was, you could tell she was longing for it, you know, and she became pregnant just with uh, just a guy that disappeared afterwards in 2009. And then she studied to be a teacher, and she's a teacher now. It's both of them in town. And with all the videos that I made, I have around like 60 hours of video of them. You know, most of them are when they were really young, but I've always wanted to make something with it, you know, a feature. And the last 2 years, an Argentine filmmaker who's chair at NYU Graduate Studies, she had been inspired to make a film of hers because of my pictures, and we talked, and she said, wouldn't you like to film them? And I was, well, it so happens I have filmed them, and she offered to help me produce it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to get funding to make the film. Got a little Sundance grant to start editing, but we need more. So this is a little snippet of just fundraising videos that we're trying to put together, but I made it shorter. This is from adolescence forward. Let's see.
No sé, si se da, podría cantar. Me encantaría. A mí también me gustaría, más que todo me gustaría actuar, porque cantar no sé mucho. Me desafino mucho. No se le teme a nada. El que teme es bobo. Yo no le temo a nada, no sé. Pero si lo verías, ¿te asustarías? Sí, a la soledad nada más. ¿Eh? A la soledad nada más. Esta foto es la primera de los dos. Me quiere un poquito. Olvidarte y no te doy valor para empezar. Yo ya me adelanté. Claro, vos te adelantaste. Y bueno, un imprevisto. Uno nunca se imagina qué va a pasar. Claro. Por ahí yo el día de mañana, ¿viste? ¿Quién te dice? Claro. Pasa exactamente lo mismo. No sé, ya sé, soy muy chiquilina. Pero no es que tenga la niñez encima, tengo 18 años y no. Yo tengo momentos en que cosas. ¿Y qué pensarías vos de tu futuro? ¿Qué va a pasar si te vas a casar, si te vas a juntar o cuántos hijos vas a tener? Eso es todavía algo como que no. Eso lo vas a decidir. Lo voy a decidir en el momento. Cuando esté con alguien y si veo que es buena persona, si me conviene, está bien.
Sé que eso lo digo ahora porque no la tengo al lado. Pero por ahí todavía no tengo previsto. Sí, quiero tener, es como todos queremos tener una familia, formarla y mantenerla. Entra la nostalgia. Sí, qué pena, loco, ¿no? Es como que estaba bueno antes. ¿Por qué nos quedamos siendo chiquititas? La vida pasó. Y demasiado rápido.
Mal de amores, dudas, sospechas, las cartas están echadas. Envía amor al 55599 y recibí todos los días el tarot del amor. No te olvides, amor al 55599 y basta de intrigas.
Okay. And now for the last 3-4 years, I haven't really photographed them that much. Belinda is very private lately, and I can tell that she's just not into it, which is really painful for me. She has 2 kids, so I wanted to have a relationship with the kids, but it's a little harder this way. And this is Belinda's daughter, Oriana. These are just raw scans. I haven't worked on them because they're very recent. This is Belinda's son, who's 15 now. Belinda and her son. So I don't even know if I'm going to end up using these images. I'm still. And one thing I discovered, which made me extremely happy, was at Belinda's mother's house. I asked her to see albums of old family pictures, so she gave me a pile. And in one of the albums, I discovered these 2 images. This is Belinda's mom on the left with a bikini and the flowers. It looks like a picture I took, but it's Belinda's, and I was like, wow, it's like full circle, and it kind of, it just called me because, you always have doubts about what you're doing, am I just imagining all this? Did I impose all this on them? Was all that forced? Is it me? Is it them? But then when I saw that, I said, what are you doing there? And she says, well, we couldn't go to the beach. Our parents didn't let us do anything. So we brought the beach to us, This I just discovered a couple of months ago. That's Belinda's mom and a friend of hers. So that's it for my monologue. What I did want to share, because I realized, I don't know, last night I couldn't sleep just reading Chomsky and his opinions about Ukraine, and I couldn't get to sleep, and everything just seems so superfluous right now, thinking that you're like on the brink of a 3rd World War. Sorry to bring this up here, but and I remembered something that I always liked. My favorite poet is Fernando Pessoa, Portuguese poet. And in the Book of Disquiet, I mean, it's a really depressing book. He's like really depressed there. But I'm going to get my little copy. There's this thing that he said here, which really is like completely not Pessoa. This is the most optimistic thing in the whole book. It almost sounds naive, but I'm just going to read it to you. Okay. To express something is to conserve its virtue and take away its terror. Fields are greener in their description than in their actual greenness. Flowers, if described with phrases that define them in the air of the imagination, will have colors with a durability not found in cellular life. What moves lives, what is said endures. There's nothing in life that's less real for having been well described. Small-minded critics point out that such and such poem, with its protracted cadences, in the end says merely that it's a nice day. But to say it's a nice day is difficult, and the nice day itself passes on. It's up to us to conserve the nice day in a wordy, florid memory. This sounds so corny, but sprinkling new flowers and new stars over the fields and skies of the empty, fleeting outer world. I don't know. I just woke up thinking of that quote, and I was just sharing it. So here we are.
Wow.
Yeah. That's really, I don't even know what to say, especially with these last photographs of the mama of Belinda. It's like, I don't know if there can be a work that anyone does for so long and not be what it is, you know, after so much time, you can't keep up faking it for so long, you know.
Yeah.
It just falls apart in a way because it changes as you change. If you were faking it a lot, but yeah, looking at these images, looking at the photographs of her children, it changes everything, and that's amazing. Anyone who has a comment or a question for Alessandra, you can now unmute yourselves and let's make it a conversation. We have a couple of minutes for this. So anyone that wants to say something, go ahead. Laurent, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just I was thinking about that passage of time, and then I was thinking about how you had that sort of turning point of where you felt that there was this challenge, and kind of having that encouragement to keep going. And then I was just thinking about how the various steps along this path sort of give a different context and a sort of an affirmatory context, I think, to all the things that you had been doing. And I'm thinking about you discovering this, these months ago, and how if you had discovered this, I think at any other time, it wouldn't have the same effect as I'm sure it does now. And you mentioned, this has been a work that's been with you for so long, and you've been talking about it for so long, and sometimes it feels like it's plagiarizing yourself, which I can understand. I can imagine from something like this. But when you have a sort of a returning point in finding something like this, what does that sort of do for you in how you're contextualizing it for yourself?
When I found this and I was looking at the mom's albums, because my whole idea was always to have a third book and a fourth, if it worked, was to start for the third book to begin with their mothers, to start with these two pictures. I mean, that's not Guillermina's mother, but it's beside the point. To go way back, instead of doing the linear thing, just moving forward or doing it at the same time. I'm brainstorming. I'm just thinking about my work as I speak. I haven't sorted it out, but I think it might be interesting to make the third book, the third body of work, be like a split, going to the past, starting in the past with their moms and their history and including them, and then their kids, and then now. And see what happens when they kind of collide. that will be fun. I just thought of that.
Yeah, and I feel like this is something where almost as more time continues, the less linear sort of is, I guess, the important factor. And you realize that there's just this sort of tension that you've been exploring of like the imagination and the realism and, family and foundation and, sort of where you've come to where you're going and how it all sort of becomes this, single almost presence, if you will. I think that's very interesting. Anna, I see your hand up, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
I'm gonna turn my camera on.
Thank you.
Hola, Alessandra.
Hola.
I'm gonna talk in English. I'm Mexican, but I'll do it for everyone. First of all, this was really, really amazing. I think your work is marvelous. For me, the feeling of looking at all this and then when they talk when they're a little older is like the nostalgic feeling of your work, and of course this story in specific. So yeah, to me that's like the purpose of photography, to make people feel things. So just wanted to share that feeling that came to me. I have a question about your relationship with photography. I want to know if you always wanted to be a photographer and like what aspirations you had, especially when you were just starting. How did you look at yourself in the future as a professional in the industry?
Well, I started to take pictures as seriously when I was a kid because of a book I saw when I was 9 that I was like, that made me realize I was going to die, and I wanted to make sure that I would photograph everything I loved so that people 100 years from then would know that we existed. That was my impulse for photography. So it wasn't, it was a kid's literal impulse. Then through high school, I did some workshops, but I never ever thought of photography as a career, or thought of it, I just like to do it. And I took workshops and I competed with my best friend who took pictures more like Salgado than the other. But, and then I studied anthropology, and that's when I realized I wasn't an academic either. It was great. I learned a lot of things, but I was a very bad student, and it made me unhappy. So I would spend most of the time just looking at people's faces and thinking how I could take a picture of them, and I was also shy. So I thought, I realized, I asked them to go down to the patio, like with the white wall. I can ask them to go down and photograph them, and that's an excuse. And so I was photographing. I was going to university and just mostly making bad Avedon copies of people. But I wasn't doing a body of work or anything. I never really took it seriously. It was just something that I really liked to do. And in Argentina, especially, photography wasn't as glamorous or interesting for people as it is today before. But in Argentina, even less so. The only photographers I knew were all men with beards. They happened to all have beards, and bohemian, it wasn't something, never thought of it as a career. In any case, and there weren't a lot of books. It was very hard to get a hold of a photography book there. So when I did this one workshop while I was in university, he had books. His name was Juan Travnik. And it was like 10 people around the round table, and everybody else understood photography. I was a baby, and I learned a lot there. I saw that you could have an intention, that you could tell a story. It was like, oh wow, this is kind of like writing a book, taking pictures. I'm making this a really long answer, but and then I went to ICP. I'll make it short. My boyfriend at the time wanted to go to ICP, so I went to, and then in ICP, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. You can work. This is a thing, you know? This is a real thing. And that's when I thought of it as, I never thought of it as a career, but that's when I thought, okay, this is what I'm doing with my life. I'll get a job as a photographer or whatever, but this is what I know how. And then I went back to Argentina and got a job as an editor in a newspaper there in Clarín. It was really male world, and there was a new photography director there, and he wanted to change it up and started hiring women. So when I went in, it was a nightmare because all the men were awful to me. You know, they were very resentful because it was a real men's world. In any case, I learned a lot there also about media and how images are manipulated, you know, so that was my education in that. And then while I was working there, I started working on the sixth day, on the weekends and etc. So it sort of all happened organically. You know, I never thought, oh, I want to become a photographer. What do I need to do to become a photographer? It's sort of, it just one step after another without realizing it, and I was a photographer. That's my long answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if anyone does, I don't know if anyone wants to talk, but I do want to continue like in this line. I'll throw it in. Who introduced you to photography, or how did you get a hold of a camera? Where do you get it from? Like, I'm really interested in that part.
That was when I saw that book, Wisconsin Death Trip. That was in my mom's coffee table. And I remember like the same day that the book sort of hit me, I asked my mom for a camera and she gave me a little Instamatic for Christmas. So, you know, the one where you had to, God, I'm so damn old, but the one where you have the flash was like these little things that burnt and then you had to throw them out. And they were really expensive, I remember. You know, I don't, like to ask for my parents to buy me more like flash cubes was like begging. Like it was, so you had like for one shot you would think about it a lot before that flash cube burnt. And I still remember that wonderful feeling of the package, you know. Anyway, so that was how it started. And then I remember having one of those Minolta that were like this, and then a 35, and so on.
Cool, thank you. So you were like the first generation in your family to actually do photography.
Yeah, my family wasn't artistic. I mean, my mom had a lot of art books, and I never asked her why, because she never had any impulse to do anything herself. She just appreciated, you know, like she had those typical coffee table books, except for some photography books that weren't very typical. And my dad made saddles. So, you know, there wasn't, I think it was those books that did it.
I found an Instamatic here in the studio.
Yeah. I think mine was like smaller than that. I wish I still had it.
On camera.
Did anyone have questions they wanted to add as well? I had one just while we're here. Especially in those early, you know, videos and the times they were, you know, obviously very engaged with you and, you know, engaging in that play and that sort of sense of imagination and everything. What were their sort of questions and observations about the actual image making process? And did any of those sort of, you know, cause you to think about how you were making the images differently?
Yeah, when they were little, they weren't interested in the final image. I would always bring them prints, which I remember back then was hard to make, you know. So I was like, and they would just glance at them, fold them in a million little pieces, and put them in their pocket. They wanted the experience. It wasn't about the final product. And you know, and while I was doing the work, I wasn't thinking about, I was just really in the moment, which maybe now I'm never in that space again. I think the first, you're always thinking, oh, it's going to become a body of work. Oh, I have an audience. You know, it's not, I hate to use this word, but it's not as pure. When I was doing this work, it was so pure. Like I didn't have another plan. I was just in the moment, you know, and I didn't have an audience. I had no idea if anybody was ever going to look at them. You know, of course I wanted people to look at them, but so wait, I got lost in those thoughts. Oh, their reaction. Yeah. So I would give them the word. They just wanted the experience. And then when they got older, one thing that really always called my attention is that how unself-conscious they were when they looked at their images. And now it's not so much. But for a long time, they would never say, oh, I don't look good there. Ever. I mean, they would never say, I don't like how I look there, I look weird. They would giggle. They would say, it's funny. Oh, look how silly. But they never felt bad about any picture. They never felt ashamed. And I'm speaking for them because I heard them say this, but I think they appreciated it. They appreciate all those images and the times that we did it together. You know, they would never do anything they don't want to do, because our relationship was really, it wasn't me, you know, big photographer, adult going. It was me saying, please, can I take a picture of you there, please? You know, we were on the same level, you know, and then they would say no, you know, and I would beg them or say, I'll make you chocolate, you know, whatever. But so that's like the spirit the work was made in. And then when they were older, that was harder. When they were older teenagers, I had to remember what it was like to be a teenager, that you have your own space. I wasn't as aware as I am now about how invasive photography is. And I'm really glad I wasn't aware, because now I'm so aware of like the politics of it, like who's representing who's talking to, you know, for whom, etc. And if I had gone with all of that baggage in my mind back then, I wouldn't have been able to make the work. But it doesn't take away from how important those conversations are. But it's fine to tell stories about other people. You know, sometimes you can see other people more clearly from a, you know, than you can see yourself. You know, somebody else can see you more clearly than you can see yourself. I'm going in other directions now, but back to them and their feelings. Guillermina, she's family now, right? Like we're family, but she has always enjoyed it. She always got it. She always understood art, or, you know, that there was another literature, magic, but that there was a purpose to doing this that for most people seemed like totally ridiculous for an adult to be photographing kids, you know. Belinda understands it, but in her, who knows how. Belinda's a mystery. You know, she doesn't reveal a thing. I don't know Belinda as much as Guille, but she's the type of woman that never does anything she doesn't want. So at some level, I think she always appreciated it. And plus, her mom told me that she has a box with everything, all the press clippings, everything like really well taken care of. So when I heard that, I was like, good, okay. But now she doesn't want to, you know, and it's really painful for me. I wanted to show her the videos. She's like, no, I don't want to see them. You know, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on with her, you know, but Okay, I'm talking too much.
No, I appreciate that. I just have one last follow up, if I.
Yeah.
I'm curious because when I think about sometimes with things over time and people over time is kind of what elements are kind of already there that you kind of realize later were the same elements. In looking back now, is there an element of lack of surprise for you at their respective sort of positions with regards to this work, and Belinda's sort of privacy and pulling away from it?
Wait, I think I spaced out a little. Could you ask me again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm just wondering, like, in looking back now, do you feel like you saw the seeds planted of what the current, sort of their current relationship to the work now, and sort of, Belinda's withdrawal in some ways, and sort of, kind of hesitancy to consistently engage with it in the same way that she did? Do you think you saw any of that looking back now?
No. 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 I think it. No, I mean, there's a lot of things that don't surprise me of what goes on, how their life has evolved, because having that distance, that perfect sort of balance of intimacy and distance, because I'm not really in their lives like I am in my daughters, so I can see from afar the patterns, the things that repeat themselves, and the self-prophesizing, a lot of things that just that you can't escape yourself, and I find that really interesting when I watch it. I can't do it with my own life because I'm me, but I can see them, like how certain attitudes or certain preconceptions about themselves just came true. They either they're making it happen just by all that psychological aspect, who you are and how you become and how much control you have over your life, and in that sense. But no, I didn't know Belinda was going to. I think it's more complicated, her husband, etc. But yeah.
Something I find really interesting about all that, all that you're talking about, and the way that the work formally came up to. Because when I see the work, especially with the explanation you made today for us, it really seems like at the beginning you were photographing their life, but also your life in a way that they were photographs about the way you played together, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels so honest. It feels so playful. So like letting us all into that play, and somewhere in the line of or in time, it becomes about wondering about life in a way. It kind of, if you were thinking about that these girls will grow up and they will face some things that maybe you were facing at that time as an adult, and then the complete separation, and you're trying to go back into lives that were developing in ways that you couldn't follow anymore because they were constructing their whole lives. And it shows so clearly in the work that it's really impressive. And I think this is because we could talk about, is this something that was planned, and is this something that has to do with a vision of narrative? And I think that the thing that I'm more it's not surprised, it's impressed by that is to be able to be so honest about yourself in such a long period of time, because it's 20 years of this, And even right now, you're telling us that now you can go back, and what you're doing with this contrast between the memories that they have somewhere that you can't understand but can see and try to figure out, and these more recent photographs about their children and other things. The new photographs they do seem formally like you are photographing from far away, like this is their life, this is what they become, but you kind of you are finding some kind of hole there that you want to feel, something that you had before but don't have anymore, and you go with these photographs of their mother trying to feel that, you know? It's really amazing how, like, being so invested in a project, these kind of things, when you follow them so consistently, you start falling into place, you know. That's something that I find really,
Yeah.
really interesting. Not really a question, but it just got me thinking. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's rewarding, because there's many times when I feel like it's repetitive, uninteresting, or forced, you know, or when I question why I'm doing it and are they into it, and but but um but yes, it is worth it. You paying deep attention to something is always going to reward you.
Yeah, and I guess that's what we do as photographers. You know, we pick up a camera because we're paying deep attention to something that is out there or inside of us that we see represented out there. So it's really,
Yeah, and it's so intangible, and it's you can't grasp it, you can't articulate it. You know, you can. I almost feel me as a photographer, I feel kind of like I'm just banging my head against the wall, just photographing, just trying to break through to the other side.
yeah.
You know, I don't know.
We have a question here from JS. He typed it in the chat. He says, "I really admire the distinct style of your photos. The color tones, composition, depth of field, they all have your signature. Forgive the simplistic question on aesthetics, but was this style something you struggled to develop? Were you influenced by other photographers or other media? Thank you for sharing your wonderful work with us, Jay in Japan."
Thank you. Um, no, I've never been that organized, you know, to like think about like what style I should have for a body of work. Especially back then. Um, I knew I knew that it needed to be in color. I knew that it needed, just like with On the Sixth Day, because that space, the farmlands, for many people, they're just this empty, kind of slightly depressing space, you know, flat, and it looks like nothing is going on. And I think completely the opposite. I always thought the opposite. So I knew that when I wanted to photograph there, I wanted it to be very vivid. I wanted it to be saturated. But I wasn't thinking of it in terms of style or anything. It was just like this is what it is. It's like so alive. You know, I can't see it any other way. The blood has to be really red, the green, the blue. Um, and then I basically just put everything in the middle. You know, with the Hasselblad, I mean, I was actually worried because everything I was just like, if you look at all my pictures, so like everything's in the middle. Not anymore, but no, I didn't I didn't really study what kind of style. Of course, you look at your work. You know, I'm kidding when I say it, but you know, you shoot, you look at your work, and you see, you know, what's translating well, what's working well, what's telling the story in the best way. So when you go out and shoot the next day, you have that in mind, and you kind of learn from your own, from what you did the day before, and what spoke to you, and what was faithful to what you were thinking and seeing. And then little by little, you don't know it, but you're gonna have style, you know, if you work and pay attention to how you're working. And about other photographers, of course, I'm influenced by everyone. You know, ever since I was 9, it's like everybody. Elliot Erwitt, Avedon, like, and I don't remember his name. And even photographers that I don't like, they influence me, you know, or advertisements, fashion photography. I would love to look at Vogue while I was doing these pictures, you know, just ripping off like fashion things and thinking, oh, that looks great. Everything influenced me. But in terms of like Nan Golden at the time was big for me in the sense of I had her for one day at ICP for a weekend workshop. This is before she was a star. She had done the ballad, but she was super accessible. And her main thing, the 2 days, she didn't teach, just had conversations. But I remember her like being really big about like, is this honest? You know, I remember showing her a picture of a kid with a cigarette like this. She says, does that kid smoke? I'm like, no, you know. And I remember I put this cigarette in there. She was like, so why do you do it? You know, I don't know. Just that little weekend made me like, was a lesson in that. I completely forgot why I'm talking about this.
But that's some great advice there.
It is. And I think it actually perfectly segues to Summer's question that she typed in as well. Summer said, I find it very interesting that photographing children wouldn't allow you to be the director you were maybe used to before this body of work. So I think the term you used was little dictator. Did you take some of the spirit of spontaneity with you into other projects? And then what about for the later years while the girls grew older? That was from Summer Weiger.
Yeah. I think it's a constant struggle, you know, to let the world speak to you instead of speaking to it, you know, of imposing too much on it so that it just is, you don't learn anything from it. I think I struggle with that all the time, in everything, in all my work, you know, how much, when to stop controlling it, when to let whatever's in front of you like control a little bit of you, or like change the way you're looking at it or them. Or I think it's always a struggle. In terms of like being a little dictator, yeah, I mean, when I photograph people, well, especially because I was always in a very low speed, so that will be the dictator part. Stay still, you know, that kind of thing. It wasn't so much about telling them exactly what to do, but like stay still, look that way, the light, that you know. So that can work many times, but it has to be balanced. In my case, there's absolutely, you know, as you know, there's no right way to do any picture. Everything is valid and everything is going to work depending on the story you're telling.
Thank you so much.
So I think it is a good time to end this. You say, Lauren?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much, Alessandra, for really being so open for this process. It's really beautiful. It's obviously beautiful work, but it's so much more enriching to be able to hear about all the process and the path, and also the current sort of ponderings and questionings about what it is and what it will be. So thank you so much for that. I feel like to end, I wonder if you could just let us know where we can find that quote from Fernando, the other Fernando.
Here, wait, can you see it? It's the Book of Disquiet.
The Book of Disquiet.
see.
I get it right in the chat.
Yeah.
There, you got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's the most cheerful quote. Everything else, you know,
That's good to
don't read
know.
it when you're feeling too down.
Thank you, Alessandra.
Okay.
It was
Thank
really,
you.
great to see what you're doing right now. It really it made something changed in me when I saw these last photographs that are kind of part of the same work and kind of something different. It's I'm really looking forward to see if this gets somewhere and to see the finished product.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Gracias, Alessandra. Un abrazo.
Thank you so much, Fellowship, Alessandra. It's so beautiful to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Summer.
See you all next time.
Bye, everyone.